Okay. So I think that, it would like almost be of service to like every day be reminded that it's always darkest before the dawn. And like darkest in the sense that before any kind of breakthrough, integration, like leveling up of awareness, um, like the old model, the old version stops working. And so that's what we're pushing up against is the insistence that the way that we see the world is absolutely correct. And that discordance of that tension, even that tension that's created. And so the forcing function of, of bad feelings, of feeling terrible, is really, it's either going to resolve itself with grace because, certainly in my experience, it just intensifies. Um, so it's either the resolution either involves some form of just like a grace in terms of what we're going to talk about here in techniques and exercises, which is like what comes with inquiry, which is like an expansion and an opening, and that it's kind of like boop, or a forcing function for action, which is, kind of like the rock bottom notion where it will just, it'll just kind of continue to get worse and then eventually becomes completely untenable in a way that is like has like a physical limit, like, so it's always darkest before the dawn. It's like to find in the moments, the darkest, most hopeless moments, to realize that the truth of hope is what is trying, like, or even like a hope is kind of a weird word. There's a truth that is trying to break through that is likely going to be uncomfortable to reconcile. And most of TPM is about some level of reconciliation of things that we've held on to as safe, that have formed us, the adaptations that kept us safe and grew us and built us and got us through the early stage of our life, the earliest stages of our life, and then this reconciliation of them, which is calling to question whether things that we believe are true are actually absolute. And as a result of that, a lot of the sense that folks have of like feeling like something's missing, like this kind of like this sense of angst, this existential angst where it's like, what is this thing? What is this thing? Instead of that being evidence of something necessarily missing, it's a divining rod to like help point us to just greater levels of actualization, because there is actually nothing missing. It's just a kind of refinding and uncovering and revealing. So, the feeling of emptiness is a feeling. It's not the presence of emptiness. Well, inherently, like in the sense of like missing, of like lacking. There is emptiness, it's just not lacking. It's a spaciousness that is actually just like transcends, I guess, like physical notions. But so anyway, I'm going to read a little bit today about that. So we're going to do the introduction to the techniques and exercises. And for folks who are following along in the book, here we are at the top of the techniques and exercises section. And what is this? Page 263. And so the little prompt, previously the ginger person that became something a lot more pretty once Sheila, the designer, got involved, is so the prompts are using fingers to comb and massage the scalp. So it's kind of like activating and then turning down external sensory, sensory stimulation. Now, one of the things I kind of want to bring attention to is that 2 points here is that bringing attention to when there's, like, sensation at the top of your head, which can be a thing, um, and br attending to sort of, like, what's happening when you're feeling that. And also turning down external sensory stimulation. I would also say slowing things down to the extent that you can. So to try to move more at a sort of like what I'd consider to be sort of like a natural homey like sort of copacetic rhythm. But also, yeah, it's also crowding out a lot of the comfort of distraction, and I'm calling it comfort because I find it really comforting, and as I've mentioned in previous readings, it's really, it's something that I have to kind of coax in gradually, um, to be in sustained states of, like I don't even know what to call it because it's not silence, it's something else. Yeah. There's a lot I wanna share, it's interesting, there's a lot I wanna share right now, but it's like, it's so personal, and it doesn't and I don't feel like it's kind of like the block where it's like there's things I'm kind of, like, oddly, like, not sort of like, I almost feel, like, allowed to say it, just it's like I wanna say it, and it's like, yeah, that not that. Um, so whatever that is. So I'm gonna start reading, and we'll see what comes up. So, the Parinama Method, 7th Hub Fundamentals, and the Techniques and Exercises, and this is the last techniques and exercises. And one of the things I'm gonna say is that okay, this part I'll say, is that in this practice, in this chapter I'm glad it's a shorter chapter. It's felt like forever because it's just, like, really part of the practice, and the of it is, like this kind of hyperspaciousness that is really, like I've mentioned before, is just I really don't really relish being in it, like, and focusing on it and the creation of that. Um, mm, yeah, it's really hard. Like, I mean, it's antithetical to, like, modern life is to spend a lot of time sort of in this very, like, receptive state of, like, sort of this kind of, like, level of emptiness. People who get it, like, will understand what I'm talking about, and I imagine some folks will think this sounds kinda nuts. Um, Both are true relative to your parallax, where you stand to the relative to that piece of that notion. So anyway, so the 7th hub fundamentals. So the 7th hub can practice awareness of itself and is self-referential. The uniquely human capability of self-awareness is possible because of the prefrontal cortex. We can choose what we focus on and evaluate reflexes and responses. Right. So again, the physical practice of yoga was intended to prepare the body for stillness so the mind could engage in contemplation, inward focus, concentration, and transcendence without the restlessness of the body causing distraction. You know, it's funny, last night I was I went for a walk out in Cambridge. I don't even know if it was night, it was like evening, but now in Boston it's dark at 4, so there's that. Um, and, uh Jesus, like the LDS, like formerly called Mormon, this bright-eyed, sparkly, young white boy approaches me in Central Square, and it was really interesting. We had this conversation. He's really, elder, and then his name. I was like, "What's that?" It's like, elder is so cute. It's just really cute. And it was just really interesting, um, to connect with somebody who had that much conviction And, like, and I think one of the things is, like, it was, like, this enjoyable conversation, I think for, honestly, like, for both of us because, like, I was like, well, I kind of, like, I haven't read the Book of Mormon, and if I'm being honest, I don't really have a lot like, an interest in it. I mean, I don't maybe someday. Right now, I don't. But to discuss the Bible, it's kind of fun to talk with somebody who's, like, actually familiar with the Bible and who has, like, it's just it was really interesting. But it was also, it was, like, one of those things that I could see the quality of, like, a connection with, like, this notion of, like, what I'd call Christ consciousness. I could see, like, what that does in a person in terms of, like, the positive aspect of it. And then, I also mentioned with him, like, the fact that what you're talking about is this really, like, ultimate source of, like, what you call power. So to get it transmitted through anyone else means that their motivations and their perspectives are going to be impacting the information you receive. But that there's also the need that for teachers who are, like the disciples, the apostles, whatever, you know, folks who like really can dedicate, who have this like kind of very particular capacity and can dedicate themselves to, like like the life of contemplation as it relates to this, because, it's kind of a sharing of duties. But that the important, like this important part of this is not, and this is the part I think that gets missed and sort of alluded to, but missed, is that it's like to teach somebody something and not interfere with their direct relationship with it. Something so powerful as being able to feel the naturally arising notion of integrity, of your own personal integrity. And so it was interesting. It was nice, actually. Yeah, I was like, "Are you from Utah?" He's like, "No, I'm from Texas." And I was like, "Well, how would I fucking Mormon?" Of course. I guess that actually speaks to their diaspora as they consider themselves to be Jewish or offshoot shoot of Judaism. Anyway, so as is connected the notion of Zion, and yeah. Okay. So the final stage of Erickson's psychosocial development theory is integrity versus despair. And we'll talk about this in the final chapter of chapter 13. God, it's really interesting. It's really interesting that when I was in the process of creating this book, that there were notions that are somehow in it that I had not fully understood, and this is one of them. It's really interesting. It's really interesting. It's like when my own practice evolves, that this book continues to be able to support it when technically I'm like the author of it. So that seems like that's odd. You wrote it. How is it absolutely like able to support you in something that's beyond where you were when you're, and that's a whole other thing. I don't know if we'll get into it in this series, but it certainly is in chapter 12. Certainly, yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I'm kind of like air quotes allowed to talk about that. So the final stage of Erickson's psychosocial. I mean, even when I was writing the book and I was hitting these darkest before the dawn periods of being in kind of despair, I'd hit it because it was just really hard, because it's like just even touching this like kind of leads to just transformation and reconciliation and like these kind of like openings. So it was like it's like going through it and then also documenting it in a sense, like I don't know if documenting is the right word, but writing about it. It's just really hard. And also being in a really early, like, or in a particular cycle rather of letting go of things, and like the thing is like the of safe things, and how, the level of difficulty of that, is like was difficult in a way that, like, I don't experience it as difficult anymore, but I still feel it. It's not like, but anyway, the final stage of Erikson's psychosocial developmental theory is integrity versus despair. See chapter 13. And so, by the way, Erik Erikson, the developmental psychologist, um, widely known for his developmental theory that relates to childhood, was the developmental theorist that actually had the stages of development all the way to death. So his final stage that relates to, like, the final phase of life is integrity versus despair. Just even reading that, I'm like, good gravy. This thing's got integrity. So forming a sense of identity, integrity, strong enough to withstand physical disintegration, despair. So that's the phase, is integrity versus despair, is forming a sense of identity, integrity, strong enough to withstand physical disintegration. Oof. Ooh boy. Wow. That's just like, that's it. So in his model, this starts at age 65, but we can begin building towards this integrity at any time. Wow. Tell me if that doesn't hit. Phew. So our tolerance for the unknown and the questions we ask determine our capacity in this hub. The more we learn, the more we realize how little we know. How could we possibly know everything and put ourselves in the position of being absolutely certain? How could we possibly know everything and put ourselves in the position of being absolutely certain? The pattern recognition associated with intuition in the sixth hub becomes conscious wisdom when we consider outcomes and their consequences. We see how our life involves a series of increasingly complex challenges like fractal patterns that are both mathematical and naturally occurring. See above and chapter 9. So it's like above means this chapter, this section on fractals. We encounter the same issues in life, but at an increasingly larger size and scale in a natural pattern, somehow linked to our unique emblem. That's good. I feel that. Okay, so what do we have to look forward to? What's coming next? We've got, so this is like so practical, the techniques and exercises. Inquiry, so exercises and techniques and exercises. Inquiry, limiting beliefs, stillness and silence, take an awe walk, and meditation, focus and concentration. What comes after this page? Is there more? Yeah, and then we do charge and discharge. And then, oh my God. Ooh, we're done with part 2. Wow. Wow. That's wild. That is wild. Well, I will tell you that my inquiry in this particular hub had been particularly fraught, as I'd referenced in in some of the previous readings where I was really, like, not enjoying being, like, so liminal and kind of feeling like it's ungrounded, honestly. It's Sattvic. It's very, like and I don't know, I don't like it. It's a quality that I tend to sort of disdain in others, like, not that that's, like, where I see people are like, "Do, do, 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 do." So maybe that's, whatever, but so, yeah. But so my teacher had said to me a couple days ago that, like, the thing that's coming through right now is I need to connect the dots. And they're like, "There's nothing more that can be said. You need to connect the dots. You need to connect the dots." And they just connected. It's really interesting. This is something I wouldn't just, like, kinda speak out on here. This is something that's kind of more of a discussion about what this means and what I'm pointing to. But my question had been, like, what's blocking me right now? I'm, like, blocking something, like, there's a sense of, and so it was, like, the connecting of the dots, and the dots got connected, and I think I'm gonna have to spend a bit more time in really, like, working that, but yeah, that's it on that. Okay, that's it for today. I will see you next time. I absolutely love you. Thank you for watching. All comments I'll respond to. And yeah, any interaction is great, but also just watching. I'm just happy you're here. And I'll see you on the other side. Bye for now.